Hello everyone, this is my interview with Harry Halpin, a research scientist from MIT, an anarchist, an activist, and the CEO and co-founder of Nym Technologies. Nym is a new privacy tool that is trying to break a global mass surveillance by rerouting your traffic through independent nodes and mixing it with noise to render traffic analysis unfeasible. This is very new and it will need to pass the test of time, but it is a project I will be closely following. For this interview, I recorded my questions separately as I only had a microphone for Harry. My first question for Harry was, what's your why? What beliefs, whether they be political, ideological, religious, or otherwise, do you hold that guide you to focus on what you're doing right now?
So people ask me why we decided to work in privacy technologies. Why did we decide to build Nym, which is a network to help make people more anonymous? And that was not my goal in life. I've always considered myself, since I was probably perhaps 16, I've considered myself an anarchist. So what anarchism is it means that there should be no authority but yourself. And that means that people should be able to organize themselves freely, associate with each other based on free association, and that the state, every nation state, is a coercive and ultimately dangerous mechanism that limits human freedom and therefore limits who we can be and what we can do. And I've always felt that, and I wouldn't say it's a spiritual belief. I hold the belief rationally. I think it's self-evident that the nation state and the medieval kingdoms before that and the ancient empires from the city-states of onwards have always caused damage to ordinary people and have been a limit, not a guarantor of human freedom. And that's my belief. And I would say it's a minority belief, but I think it's going to grow because it's very obvious our institutions are collapsing. On a personal front, I was not particularly, because I was an anarchist, I was always very interested in cryptography, but I never thought it was something I would do for a job. I was more interested in philosophy. I was interested in cognitive neuroscience. I was interested in math. And what happened is, in particular in the UK, I did my Ph.D. here because they gave me a scholarship at University of Edinburgh. And in Edinburgh, I'm a rational guy. I really do believe in science, not big science, not what the government says, not what the agenda says, but I believe in human reason and the power of free inquiry. And I convinced myself, and I do think evidence is on my side, that global climate change is a threat to the future of the human race. And so I worked with my friends, some of who are climate change scientists, and we decided that we would like to bring this to people's attention. And we felt that what all the governments were doing was essentially, they would pretend to be addressing this issue. In reality, they would just be taking away people's freedoms and continuing to damage the earth. And so I decided we should organize protests around this. And then the British undercover police officer, Mark Kennedy, I came to his attention due to this activity, and he thought he really didn't like anarchists. He was kind of okay with middle class, kind of bougie climate people, but he didn't like people who had a critique of the state. And so he really just disliked me, and he put me on a blacklist, and I was a foreign student. Luckily, they let me get the PhD, and then they gave me the boot from the country. And they took my biometrics from me against my will. They put police monitoring me, and it was all very unpleasant. And I didn't do anything really that illegal. I was, I believe, persecuted for my political beliefs, and I believe that can happen to anyone. And this was 2008. And then I was very depressed. I didn't know what to do with my life. I had a PhD in computer science, I wanted to help people, so I switched my interest away from artificial intelligence, which I was quite interested at the time, and moved it to cryptography and privacy. And I worked in the World Wide Web Consortium, which is a web standards body, to build standards into browsers to help people build secure applications. I wasn't like the most technically skilled person, but I had a good vision and people accepted that. We built some good standards. At the same point, every time I traveled, it even happened yesterday coming to the UK, I get stopped, I get harassed. I got Schedule 7 once in the UK, where they like take your biometrics against your will and they threaten to imprison you and all this stuff. Yeah, so it's, it really wears on you as an individual. And then you're like, well, if this can happen to me, it can probably happen to anyone. And I was very inspired by WikiLeaks. I felt WikiLeaks was one of the few uses of technology that empowered a lot of people with truth. And I told people there in 2009, I was at the launch at KS Computer Congress, and I said, look, I was like, people don't care about the truth. And the government will put you all in jail. And I was right about the latter, but not the former. Because in actuality, yes, of course they did put Julian in Belmarsh. They effectively tortured him. I believe they tortured Chelsea. But I was wrong. People did care. I do think that Chelsea's leaks helped end the Iraq War. I do think that WikiLeaks had tremendous amounts of good in the world, no matter what you personally think about Julian or Chelsea or any of these cast of characters. And then when the Snowden revelations happened, I was like, actually, the big problem is not cryptography. Cryptography is fairly well understood, minus perhaps some of the post-quantum bits. But I said, what really matters is this tracking of people, the surveillance of people. And that's not really a cryptography problem. Cryptography helps. That's a statistical problem. They want to use my devices, my credit card purchases, all these CCTV cameras, my gate, to monitor what I'm doing. And they say it's for your own good, but actually they want to control behavior. They want to predict what you're going to buy, who your friends are going to be, where you're going to go. Usually, to be frank, for fairly innocent things, like I would like to sell you stuff. And whatever. I'm not against advertising. I find it irritating. I don't find that dangerous. But the same infrastructure that is built by mass surveillance techniques, which used to be mostly governments, are now effectively privatized by firms like Palantir, and of course Google and everyone. Those same techniques can be used to eliminate political dissent. I know, because they tried to eliminate me. And luckily, when they tried to eliminate me, it was just like some old-fashioned undercover. And now it's a machine. It's a surveillance machine. And I believe as the economy gets worse and worse, as we as humans need to reinvent our entire form of society. And I'm not going to tell people how to do that, but I want people to have that chance. And we're not going to have that chance if people are surveilled and go to jail for holding unpopular beliefs, for being anarchists, for being I don't know what. That's absurd. And we have a limited amount of time where the surveillance machine is not fully empowered yet, where we can build new technologies to prevent this rather dystopian future from happening. And I think we are accelerating towards that now. And in Nym and my work with Chelsea, and my work with our wonderful team and all of our coders, we don't know if anyone's really going to use it, but I think it's our last best attempt. I can go in much more detail, but I think I did enough, yeah?
You did, yes. My follow-up question to this would be, so you've been on this scene for a long time, since the 2000s, right?
Yeah, I got involved in, scene is a hard word. I consider myself an anarchist since I was a teenager, which is the 90s. Mm-hmm. I worked on independent publishing and journalism websites in the 2000s. And then I really only got involved in cryptography and privacy enhancing technology, to be honest, after I was heavily harassed, and that was like 2008, 9 or so.
So you can be considered a veteran on this scene, I would say. So would you say that things have improved or got worse over your experience?
In terms of surveillance,
That and also this general approach that you've been talking about as to whether people care or not care, as to how much power the state has acquired and accumulated over the rights of the people and the populace. As in, for example, it'll be unconscionable to tell people that they would at some point have to give all of their possessions to guards at an airport, but now it's completely expected and rational.
it used to be, people don't know, but you used to not really even have passports. You could just jump on an airplane and fly wherever you wanted, and I think that's a great thing. And people used to be able to, in some countries, you can't even buy things in cash. The amount of power that's been accumulated by the state and an increasingly small number of corporations, which are effectively part of the state now, is increasing, and it's dangerous. And we knew it was going to increase. It was obvious it's been going to increase. We actually, protested that increase. We knew it was going to hurt ordinary people around the world. It hurts everyone. It hurts people in China, it hurts people in Africa, it hurts people in the UK, it hurts people in America. It's a universal danger, and it is accelerating at a high pace. So I would say compared, in 2000, when I first got to the UK, like 2000, when did I get to the UK? 2005, 3, somewhere in that space, there were a lot of surveillance cameras. I noticed them. I said, well, this is a bit worse than the US. It's kind of Orwellian, but now there's even more. And then when I go back to the US, I see even more surveillance cameras. And now, I refuse to use a mobile phone till like probably about 2009, 10, probably 12. I didn't really have a steady number till I just used burners. And now you can't even communicate with people without a mobile phone. It's hard to imagine life without a mobile phone. These mobile phones are, to a large extent, surveillance devices. And there's ways you can, I'm not against technology. I believe technology can improve people's lives, and we can create phones that aren't surveillance devices. We can use technology to redistribute power. But if you look at the current trend line, it's very dangerous. And people, it comes and goes. A lot of people cared, weirdly enough, in the late 90s and early 2000s. The internet was this new free space, and mainstream media was the enemy. The enemy was like the normal TV that lied to you constantly, that said, oh yeah, the Iraq war, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, and we wanted people to be able to share information more freely. And that's why friends of mine, some of them used to live in London, like Blaine Cook and Evan Hinshaw Platt. They invented Twitter. They helped build Twitter. We worked on early stuff in that space to help protesters. And the problem in the 90s and 2000s was a lack of access to information, censorship by the TV and the radio. And now it's reversed. The state has finally caught up and understood the internet, and the state is now trying to break the internet apart, splinter it in these kind of censored bubbles, and the internet is now used to surveil people. And Snowden really did a wonderful service to humanity to reveal the extent, but that's 2014. I can only imagine the scope of data processing and machine learning, quote unquote AI, that they use today to track people. And I honestly thought from about 2010 to like pretty recently, I thought people just didn't care. People were resigned. And I am a little bit more, I feel like there's more interest, and I think it's because the situation is becoming atrociously unbearable. It used to be, like, if I search something, and I use a normal search engine like Google, and I'm not using a browser like Brave, and they have cookies on my device, you used to not be tracked doing that. I mean, I'm sure they did some optimization of the results, but now you search something on one site, and it shows up on 3 other sites. It follows you around the internet. And that, I think, spooks people out. And then the algorithm is clearly trying to manipulate people's beliefs. And it's becoming increasingly hard to deny. So people that were earlier, we warned people 10, 20 years ago, this could happen. I wrote a piece called The Philosophy of Anonymous, about the anonymous hacker group and why being anonymous is important. I wrote that 2014. I said the internet is going to become a surveillance machine. And people thought that was kind of far out. And now, you know, everyone agrees. Everyone knows it's about to explode. But what can we do? I think that's the harder question.
Right, so what we can do is something that you're trying to do with Nym, I believe. And my biggest problem with this is that I can go there, I can read white papers, I can listen to all the technical stuff, and I'm fascinated by this. But how would you sell this to my mom, who doesn't even understand the difference between a search engine and a web browser? And I could give you this challenge, and you may try to answer that if you want to. But do you think that it is important that people like that are also on board with this entire privacy thing? Because it really does take a lot of effort from a person. They have to be proactive, they have to want it, they have to have the motivation to actually go through the several steps and learning all this stuff. Do you think that this is something that you can do with Nym?
Oh yeah, I think it's a mistake that's our fault. It's the fault of the programmers that's so hard to use, right? Because oftentimes when I'm a programmer, I would build tools for myself. So I would assume people are like me. People want to install Linux or use a command line, and that's total gibberish to the vast majority of the population. And being anonymous requires a crowd of people, a large crowd. The larger the crowd, the better. If it's only a few freaks, a dozen anarchists using Signal or Nym or Tor, they're just going to stand out. You need a heterogeneous, large group of people, and you use many normal people. There isn't really such a thing as normal, but you need as many different kinds of people as possible. And you need my parents, and we need your parents, and we need people that we need people who cannot even read and write. We need everyone to use the technology, because the more people in the crowd, the harder it is for them to surveil everyone. On some level, it's a collective effort. But the thing is, people have real problems. People have to pay the bills. People cannot spend tons of time learning how to install stuff. And in an ideal world, and in a former life, I remember trying to convince Mozilla, you guys should double down on privacy. Why don't you make a privacy browser? Make it easy to use. But the problem is, it's in no big company's business interest to let users be private. I mean, Apple sells you expensive stuff, so they're not quite as aggressive, but now with AI, they're going to be surveilling all their users more and more to use that data to feed whatever idiotic thing they're building a Siri. Google, their whole business model is selling data. If they can't sell to advertisers, they're going to sell it to governments. Microsoft is totally in the pocket of I would never use Microsoft tools. But people are stuck with these tools. They're stuck with what they buy when they buy a computer. And I would love it so there was a single company or nonprofit or entity that just could make something that was private. You just give someone, it just worked. And we're getting there. Graphene is not so bad, but it's a pain to install. I just installed it a few weeks ago, and it was crashed my computer trying to get it working. Really? Yeah, I did get it working. No, I had something off in my Linux machine, old library. Linux is getting more and more, it's getting a little worse, but it's pretty usable. But we need to make things easy to use. And they have to be so easy to use that you don't have to think about it, it just works. I don't think we're going to get in the world where it's so easy to use that's by default. I used to work in internet standards, and it's not impossible, right? It used to be, before the Snowden revelations, internet was non-encrypted. You would talk to your bank, and your password just go over the internet, and some guy in the cafe next to you could copy your password. And I could do that in a cafe. It was crazy. There was what was it called? Fire Sheep. There was these hilarious plugins that would do that. And then after the Snowden revelations, everyone got a bit pissed at the US government, rightfully so. Even Google got pissed. Everyone's like, okay, we're going to encrypt the web. And they encrypted the web. But they encrypted the web so that only they can surveil you. They just didn't want other people to surveil you. And that leaks metadata. It leaks who you're talking to. Am I talking to Google? When am I talking to them? Even if it's encrypted, all that leaks. And it's in no one's interest to stop that. So we're probably going to have to be content with building applications that people have to install, but we need to make the installation process easy. We need to make it like one button, so you press a button and you have some privacy. And the problem is that it's a complex problem space. Our goal at Nym, I would like to build something where you put it on your phone, you click a button, it secures your phone, it stops spyware, it checks for Pegasus. We don't have, of course, that working, and it like actually tries to secure your phone, and that we could even, you know, just sell people computers and phones with that pre-installed. We're not there yet. Hopefully one day, but for the time being, we can make it so you can at least go to your favorite app store, which could be Google Play, could be F-Droid, could be iStore, could be a Linux Debian thing, and you can just install it, and hopefully it just works. And we spend a lot of time trying to simplify the interface and looking, we watch people use it, and we say, how can we use it? And then the question is, what are we even trying to sell people? We're terrible salespeople, we're technicians, but what we are ultimately trying to sell, we ultimately want people to have, and we'll give it away. We just, we need to not starve to death in the process of making it, and you know, you know, what we want people to have is actual, genuine privacy, at least on the network level. And the reason I say that is because it doesn't even matter if you're using Signal, or you're using Monero, or you're using, I don't know what, Simplex, which is a great little chat app. It doesn't matter what you're using. If the pattern of who's talking to who is revealed, they can use that process, that data, to track you. And so we're like, if I'm gonna build a house, I'm gonna build a solid foundation. So the network, the packets, the data that goes to the network is that solid foundation. And I wouldn't explain to my mom that way, but I would say, hey mom, like Facebook's gonna track you, but can we at least give you something to make sure that like, you're not like totally being tracked by the government, and this will help at least a bit, and then we'll hopefully move more from there. And a lot of people, I think the hook is, and this is, we're not really a VPN, we're what's called a mixnet, and we can discuss that later if you wish. We're like a super private VPN. We're a mixnet, we're decentralized, we mix up packets, use all this other stuff. That's too complicated. But what a lot of people want to do is they just don't want censorship. They want to be able to access the internet. They don't like it when the web pages are blocked. They don't like it when they can't watch some video. And so I'm like, and everyone's concerned about censorship right now. Even my parents, they're like, oh, you know, and it, you know, my parents, you know, they're Trump supporters. My brother and sister aren't. I don't care what you believe. I want you to have the right to access information in an uncensored way. So we say, okay, well, that's the hook. We're going to give you uncensored internet access. And by the way, that also gives you a bit of privacy. And that's a good foundation. And because people like know what a VPN is, not everyone, but we look like 1 out of 8 humans on earth have used a VPN. So you go up to people and say, I want to use a mixnet to stop. We tried that. For years we said, hey, why don't you use a mixnet to stop surveillance? And people were like, yo, what's a mixnet? And I was like, oh man, it's gonna take a while to explain. But when I was like, hey, imagine a VPN that's like not a scam, that's actually trying to like protect you. And people are like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I know I have a VPN, I don't really trust it. Like, maybe we could try your VPN. And you know, VPNs are all over the place. Some are really probably data collection centers. Others, I think Movad is ran by honest, great people. They're all over the place. But, you know, we have our thing and we hope people use it. And the nice thing is that it actually gives people some privacy on that foundational level. And then eventually, you know, we have, if you're a programmer, you know, we built things like APIs and SDKs, and we'd like people to build more on top of it. And people could build cooler, there's no reason Gmail has to collect your data. There's no reason web browsers have cookies. The original, I know the inventor web, I used to work for him. There's no cookies in the original design of the web because they consider that surveillance and not scalable, right? So there's no reason the internet has to be a surveillance machine. It's not predestined. It was not in the original design. It wasn't even, people weren't even thinking about that. And it was hard. When they were building the internet in the 70s, encryption was like illegal, right? So you know, it was like you couldn't use it, right? And only military could use it, but now it's not, at least yet. Well, there's still a fight to defend it. But like, why not? Like, we should build an internet that empowers people, and if the simplest step is install a VPN, so be it. And that's what we're going to get people to do. And then hopefully other people like Brave, like build a better browser. Signal is built like a better messenger. Simplex is building a better messenger. People need to build things for file sharing. Everything, people don't really even do that much in it. They mostly chat and share images, and this can all be done anonymously. And it's just like, there's not enough people who understand the problems, but it's growing. There's not enough support. There's definitely not enough money. If some amount of Bitcoin goes this direction, that would be wonderful. And that's our goal. Like, that's our goal, and I think it's a totally solvable problem. And it's solvable within our lifetimes. If we had several hundred programmers working on it, wow, we could outmaneuver Google. Yeah, it's not, I mean, we built the VPN with like, whatever, 20, 30 people, right? A mixnet. We just need more people, and we need people to quit their jobs at Google. We need people to quit their jobs working for surveillance agencies, which who knows, maybe Trump's gonna fire them all. And they need to come over to our side, and they say, hey, yeah, like, I would like to create a world which is not going to control people, but I want to create a world that's going to give people freedom. And I want young people to learn programming, not to make money, but to build tools that maximize freedom. And you know, if you get taken out doing this, at least you've done something with your life. I don't want programmers to waste their time shining the knobs on Gmail, or like, I don't know, building AI nonsense which just pollutes the web with garbage. I want people to work on things that matter. And I think, I'm confident. Time is running out, but there's a lot of smart people in the world, and I think, you know, economy is crashing. That's good, because maybe some of them will work for free, or want a job which is not like at Google, but like with a smaller company or a nonprofit or whatever, and that's great. And I think hopefully get a bunch of people in.
Right, so if this goes through and becomes partially mainstream, that's going to get a lot of people angry. You're going to have a lot of enemies. Have you thought about the fact that you're probably going to crash the business model of Facebook, of Google, Microsoft? You're obviously going to crash the intelligence model of US, UK, all the other countries. Are you prepared to fight these enemies? Like, they're going to collude and coalesce to get you regulated out of existence, probably. They are going to use every horrible accusation to vilify you, to portray you as defenders of terrorists and other criminals.
Yeah, I've been accused of already, not even building privacy tech, but, you know, just for something as banal as climate change activism. You know, I've already been accused of supporting terrorism. I've been accused of being a radical. I've had, you know, when I did a job interview, FBI showed up, tried to get me fired. Wow. I've been in jail, and then what I've been through is like nothing compared to what Julian Assange has been through. Tried to kill him in Belmarsh prison down the road. Chelsea, you know, 7 years in jail, got out, another year in solitary. I mean, and they've done everything to besmirch the good name of Julian, the good name of Chelsea, the good name of Snowden. They've tried to besmirch these people, but people are not stupid. People do not trust the state intelligence agencies, and they trust less and less Silicon Valley. And no one, you know, so I feel like, yeah, like all stops may go out, and we're just gonna have to fight back, but we've seen them do it. Like, you know, I was just, you know, Chelsea and me work together, right? She's okay, she survived. I know I can survive. And if I don't survive, you know, fine, other people will carry on the cause. And, you know, I can't reveal anything here, but, you know, as a company, people say, why did you raise money? I'll tell you why we raised money, because it costs money to defend yourself. When I was a broke programmer, programming free software, working on web standards, the police screwed with me constantly, right? Every border, every time I traveled. Now, I have a bunch of lawyers. I'm suing everyone. I'm suing, you know, the police mess with me. I'm like, great, thanks for more evidence. And you know, and I'm gonna keep fighting back, and I keep fighting back because I think they want to make you think you're weak. They want to make you think you're alone, but you can fight back. And the problem is that most ordinary people don't have the financial resources to do so. But because I'm into Bitcoin. I had a few Bitcoin back in the day. I got it like a squad. Amir Taki, first person introduced me to Bitcoin in 2012. You know, our company got funding. You know, we have resources. We're not infinite, and then we're not stupid. You know, we put our company in Switzerland, which has high privacy laws. You know, and you know, they're great people. They support privacy historically. If you look even at the history of Europe, when anarchists like Jean-Jacques Rousseau was kicked out of Paris and had to go to Geneva, get kicked out of Geneva, he ends up in Neuchâtel, right? So, you know, we go to the places that have historically defended our kind of people. And, you know, who knows what will happen in the future, but we are trying to build, you know, and we are very careful. You know, we have, you know, people are like, why do you have all this infrastructure? And we have a lot of infrastructure and we have a lot of distributed infrastructure. So our goal is that even if you take me out, even if you take the whole company out, because it's a decentralized network, a lot of people hate blockchain, but it's a reasonable thing to have a blockchain in a decentralized network, because you don't want a central authority running telling you where your VPN nodes are, telling you where your mix nodes are, telling you like what servers to connect to. I want anyone to spin up a computer and turn on connect. And then just like Bitcoin, that can't be shut down very easily. So that if I get run over by a car, just something stupid, or, you know, put in Belmarsh prison or black bag, the network will continue. And people will continue to build on it because it's free software. And that's a very powerful thing. And honestly, I think the most dangerous moments have already passed. Had we been hit really hard in the beginning, it would have been very easy to take us out. And now it's like, yeah, it would hurt. But I think that if I mysteriously fell off a roof, company would go on, it'd be fine. And if the company failed and there was no money, the community would keep using and building on it. And it was that first year or two that you're actually in the most danger. And luckily, you know, we got through that.
So blockchain is how all this is going to be funded?
No. Our current plan, I mean, we would like to just give everything away for free, and we'll probably keep as many elements as free as possible. But people pay for VPN, so we're going to charge people just like a VPN, even though we're not a VPN, we're a mixnet, we're more than a VPN. And we will take whatever payment people have, because you can't be too picky. So we take Bitcoin, we take Monero, we give you like 50% off if you have Bitcoin, Monero. But we also take credit card. But when you pay with a credit card, rather than like, we don't want to know what you're doing, you get a little, what's called like an access code back, a zero knowledge proof, and you use that to kind of log in, so we don't know when you logged in. But we're trying to build effectively a sustainable business model. And we got attacked a lot for that. Funnily enough, Chelsea was one of the few people I was even nervous about. Chelsea actually supported. She said, yeah, like, and Julian supported. And the reason is because up until blockchain technologies existed, in particular Bitcoin, all cryptography was basically funded by the US and a few nonprofits that were mostly the US State Department behind them. And that's just true. And I thought it wasn't the worst thing. I was like, look, you gotta take the money wherever it's at, because it's more important to build technology to like virtue signal. However, it is dangerous to be dependent on any government, particularly a government as malicious as the United States, for funding to build freedom enhancing tools. They will try to use it for their own political purposes, and they will cut you at a moment's notice. And that's actually already what's happening. So, you know, a lot of people critiqued us. I said, look, blockchain technologies make sense because you want the whole network to be decentralized. I don't want a centralized VPN. I want something more decentralized, so that if I want to keep running without any humans involved, worst case. Second, in order to build this, we need funding. And to get that funding, the only people, you know, you go to traditional Silicon Valley people and you'd be like, hey, I want to build a privacy network. And they're like, oh, really? Here's your business plan. And no one's going to use it. Why don't you just build like another surveillance device, or like an Uber for cats or something ridiculous? Like, you know, we had no luck with traditional Silicon Valley people. And then the blockchain folks showed up and Bitcoin showed up. And then people were much more receptive. And I think a lot of it's because a lot of people, to be very frank, you know, they support privacy tech for personal reasons, and they were much easier to talk to, and they supported us. And they realize you have a really weird, you know, how were we funded? We were funded by Chinese libertarians, right?
Those exist?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot. You know, push comes to shove, normal Chinese people just want to make some money, and the reason they like Bitcoin is because the CP can shut their bank account down at any moment. There was quite a reality. We got funded by Europeans who, of course, because of the history of surveillance, particularly due to communism and Stalinism in particular, and the history of, so they were concerned. Americans tend to be concerned by the NSA. People are like, oh, we need some. The European Union even gave us a bit of money because they're like, oh, we want to build something better than the NSA. And we're like, fine, we'll take money from anybody as long as there's no strings attached. And the way you make sure there's no strings attached is you give them no equity, you give them no control, and you make everything free software.
Okay, so talk a bit more about the mixnet. We don't have to go too much into details. We can defer to the conference, to the launch event. But you're free to talk even more if you want to. I just didn't want to repeat yourself too much.
Oh, it's fine. So people are like, can I be anonymous on the internet? And that's a very hard question. And that question came up first in like 1970s. It was like just and this guy called David Chaum, who's an absolute genius, he said, well, it's not even that hard. I mean, it is hard, obviously, but he had the breakthrough. He said, why don't we just take all the packets from the internet, encrypt them, mix them up, shuffle them like a deck of cards, and then send them out again in a different order. And then eventually when you receive the packets that are just for you, you decrypt them. That was, it's in his PhD thesis from the 80s. And that inspired a lot of people, in particular a group in California called the cypherpunks and the crypto anarchists. And they're like, we could imagine, because David's like, he wasn't like a political radical, but he said, yeah, this technology can really preserve human freedom and help democracy. And people said, well, we can actually rewrite how the world works if we have strong cryptography and anonymous communication. And so they tried to build mixnets and for the real time. A guy called Lynn Sassaman, who I met luckily before he died. He built something called Mixmaster. There were some other what we called remailers. So I could send email to someone else's server. He would encrypt it. They would mix it with other emails, and that would disguise who sent the email. Mostly used to involve, funnily enough, to fight or to avoid lawsuits from Scientology. People were leaking the Scientology text back then. This is the mid 90s, I would say. But the problem is that technology, it worked, but it was very slow, and you couldn't really do anything but email for it. And the internet was just kind of slower back then, so the Tor people came around. They were actually working on mixnets. They're, Roger Dingledine and Nick Mathewson, they're geniuses. They worked with George Denises, a friend of ours, on a successor mixnet for Mixmat called Mixmaster. It's a great, and so it was can we, because the problem is I send you an anonymous email, how are you going to respond to me? Can you respond to me anonymously? And actually there's a way to do that using cryptography, and they built that. So basically, I send you an email, and I don't give you my email address to respond. I give you an anonymous Dropbox, and you send a message to that Dropbox. That I anonymously pick up that message, and then I send you another Dropbox. You can have a little conversation anonymously that way. But all these technologies were abandoned in the mid 2000s. All the interest went to Tor, rightfully so, because Tor worked really well. But then after WikiLeaks got attacked. I would sit down with Julian, but yeah, we should revisit mixnets after. We need really strong technology, because the thing is, even if you can watch every single packet on the internet with a God's eye view, you can still, if all the packets are mixing and you're adding in fake packets, I can't tell who's talking to who. That's a very powerful piece of technology. We just needed to build it to be faster and more usable. And so Anya Petrowska and George, Anya's now at Nym, they built what's called a continuous time mixnet. So I could send packets, not just email, but anything, whenever I want. And I could send it through a mixnet and make it anonymous. It was still pretty slow, but I said, that's the killer concept. And then we just need to make it faster. We need to get real code out there. We should link it to an anonymous payment mechanism, and that's what we should be building. And then that's why we founded Nym. And we tried to build this mixnet to make the entire internet anonymous. And we had a lot of support from a lot of amazing people who I really respect. Very diverse cast of characters, I might add. Amir Taki, who should definitely get a show at some point, working on DarkFi. Adam Back. A lot of people think he's Nakamoto. He's not. Cool guy. Binance. I mean, it was crazy. Binance. People were all interested in this tech. But then the problem is they were interested in this tech because they're all kind of cypherpunks or know a lot about this kind of technology. But then when we said, hey, look, we built it. We have a technology where I can send any packets in, I can mix it up, and it might be a bit slow, but you can make it slower to be more anonymous, you can make it faster to be less anonymous, but you can still at least achieve a level of being anonymous against, like, you know, a nation state NSA kind of adversary who's watching all the packets. You know, people, you have this hope that they kind of build, you know, you build it and they will come, and not enough people came. So it's okay, we're gonna make something that's as easy to use as a VPN because that's what people need. So we just kind of took the mixnet technology, which has a decentralized set of servers that are like rewarded for kind of mixing based on how much they mix and their quality of service. And we put that behind like a VPN interface. You can like download, you just hit connect, and then all your packets go through it. And the problem is it is slow. I'm not gonna lie, because that's the price you pay for being anonymous. So, but we said, well, some people, they just want to escape censorship. And so we made a version where we just turn off the mixing. You just kind of go to one decentralized server and you go to another and then you're out. It's really similar to Tor. And that's what we call the fast mode. So if you download the software, it's called Nym VPN. It's on like whatever, all the Google Plays and Apple stores and stuff and F-Droid. You can download it and you get like 2 modes. And you want to be anonymous, you click the anonymous mode and you know it works because it's a bit slower, a lot slower. And then there's the fast mode. And I think it's the best we have. I think we can. It's not the only solution. You know, we don't support hidden services. Tor is still great. Tor is free. I think we should support Tor. I don't know. There's lots of theoretical work out there, like DCNets, that someone should be working on, which provide maybe even better guarantees of being anonymous. But they're like a bit even possibly slower or like harder to scale. We feel like the mixnet was like about as good as you're gonna get with the tech we have today. And the nice thing about it is we know it scales really well. So like the more people that use it, the more anonymous everyone is. That's great. And if tons of people use it, then we just expand the number of servers mixing everyone's traffic together, and that makes everyone, you know, more anonymous. And you know, hope it takes off like Bitcoin, to be honest.
How would the reward mechanism work for the node operator?
Yeah, so it's a bit like when you are, let's say I want to like mine some Bitcoin, you got to turn it on, you turn on your computer, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this mining thing, and you come back and there's some money. Maybe not very much nowadays, it used to be very easy. And because you're doing this what's called proof of work. You're running a little algorithm over again and again and again to find some magic numbers. And then I looked at Bitcoin, I said, what if all that computational power, a friend Adam told me about this, could be used to defend privacy? So what, because the reason no one built a mixnet is because it was like, oh, it's gonna be expensive, like who's gonna pay for all the mixing? I was like, well, make it like Bitcoin. Make it so that when you turn on a computer, packets come in, the more packets you mix, the more rewards you get. And you get them in a little cryptocurrency wallet, and we can convert them to Bitcoins. If you like Bitcoin, you get Bitcoin. If you don't care, we call them Nym tokens for anonymous. It's like your reputation for how good you are mixing. And you just should be able to do it on any computer. The bigger computers you have, just like the bigger Bitcoin miners you have, the more bandwidth you have, the more you'll get. And we think that's actually a pretty good system. I don't think anything better is out there. Maybe someone will invent it. So that's what we currently have. And rather than like proof of mining, it's really like a proof of mixing algorithm. And the more nodes that participate, the better. The more different countries people are in, the better. But ultimately, people are rewarded via what's called a smart contract. So we don't actually control the rewarding. We use cryptography to judge the amount of mixing, and then people get rewarded based on how much mixing they're doing, how many packets they're carrying. There's parameters that have to be tweaked now and then, but the fundamental system, we want to be fully automated. Because if I'm a single company and I just contract out a bunch of different servers, you can still go after my single company, right? So we don't want to know who these people are who are doing it. We just don't want them to be rewarded for their good work.
Okay, so you think that this is going to interest people to do something like this?
Yeah, we have like, it used to be 1,000, it goes up and down. I think it might be like 800 now, like 500 mixed nodes and like 300 entry exits, which are like the VPN country entry exit points.
Is there this same danger as there is with running of the exit node?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, we don't want you to do it for free. You get some money, you know, and we want to help support you legally. If something goes wrong, we have like a channel. People can say, okay, look, I got DMCA request. We think, you know, what if the police come? It really depends on your jurisdiction. Like in Germany, people are very aggressively against, not the German people, German hackers are wonderful. It's the German police are very against, like, you know, oh, copyright infringement. And they're like, you know, they really be quite painful. But then on the other hand, in some jurisdictions, it's like Wild West. No one cares, right? Set up a server in Armenia, good luck. You know, government's got bigger problems than your server, right? And you know, and some centralized VPN providers will say, well, why don't you just trust us? And I do, like, I like folks that founded Mulvat are straight, hardcore people who I like quite a lot. I do trust, but anyone can fall to government pressure. And so we make a different bet. We say, well, let's just make it statistically harder to pressure a single person. That's the goal. So we spread out the servers in as many countries as possible, and each packet goes through an entry for the mixnet. It goes through an entry point. It goes through 3 different servers and out, and then decrypted. And then another packet comes, 256K, and they go through like another set of servers, and they come out. So statistically, you have to like really compromise law of servers, and we think that gives you reasonable security guarantees, even though maybe intuitively, like, why would I trust a group of random strangers more than someone I know? But I'm like, do you really know any of these people? Why don't we just trust random strangers and use the power of cryptography to enforce our privacy? And it's unlikely, because they are actually random strangers, and there's a lot of them, and they're in different countries. It's unlikely that any one of them individually will fall to any kind of pressure.
Yesterday, you said this doesn't work in China. Why is that?
Yes, so China has very sophisticated, what you call AI or deep learning mechanisms that monitor the traffic. So if I'm mixing my traffic up with a lot of different people, and I'm adding fake traffic, it looks kind of weird. So that's why we need many people to use it. And it worked for China it worked for a bit. We have Chinese users, they're some of the most active, but then it stopped. And it's because it's very easy to distinguish. It just looks like something weird is going on. And China, when they see something weird, they're not after us in particular. Perhaps one day, they're just like, well, that's weird, let's turn it off. Like in other countries, they're like, whatever, that's weird, maybe it's just some random internet stuff, we'll let it through. And so China is really hard. It does work really well in Russia, because in Russia, they're different. In Russia, they say, well, if it's something weird, the Russia's like, we don't want you to use Google, but if it's just some weird internet stuff, we'll let it through. And so that stuff we get through their censorship tools in Russia. In China, it's harder. So we're working with our Chinese community, like 1,000 Chinese people who test stuff and who are interested. And, you know, we're gonna like figure out what works there. And, you know, I think it's not impossible, because again, it's an arms race. So China has a lot of AI, deep learning, but what you can imagine is you can disguise what you're doing to look like something else. It's not a mixnet, it's not a VPN, let's just pretend you're going to like Baidu or, you know, something. And it's called obfuscation, where you kind of hide what you try to like put a mask on. And that is tough, but it can work. And also the Chinese government kind of doesn't care if like, they're like worried if like there's like 5,000 people using a server, but if it's like 30, maybe it's just a small business, they'll probably let it go. So the goal is to have a large decentralized network where there's a lot of different people running nodes, and they're all like trying to disguise, and there'll be just like a little arms race. And, you know, because the Chinese are not as worried about us as they are about Tor, because I don't think they would consider us a tool of US imperialism, you know, we think we probably get through eventually. And also, you know, China may turn the firewall off one day when they're like, whatever, we can take over the world now. So maybe they're just going to turn it off, and they're going to be like, everyone's going to just go from Google to, I don't know, Alibaba, right? So, but it's not, we don't have that working yet. We have people actively working on it. And I would want to say one thing. A lot of people like, yo, my VPN works in China. I would just be like, go to China. And it usually doesn't work. And we know that because we have a lot of Chinese users, and we're honest. Like, we know like it doesn't work in China, and we tell you that. And we see like some other VPNs like, oh, we work in China. Then I like message my Chinese friends on our chat channel. I'm like, yo, can you try this out? They're like, doesn't work. Now, Chinese censorship varies a bit place by place, maybe, but I think in general, a lot of VPNs are interested in selling you stuff. And I mean, we would like you to use Nym VPN, but if you trust Mulvad more, go for it. If you trust Proton more, go for it. Like, we're not going to tell you what to do, but we also don't, you know, we take it seriously, and we're trying not to advertise that we're something we're not. So I'm not going to tell you it works in China when it doesn't. Okay. And I am concerned because the same kinds of techniques the Chinese government uses for AI and deep learning will eventually, that technology is completely usable by the British government, by the French government, the US government, and they will eventually start using that technology, I bet money, on their own people. And so everyone is like, I've been to China, it's a crazy place, lots of people, everyone's hustling really hard. It doesn't appear like a stable surveillance state. I actually say Europe appears more like a stable surveillance state. Like, people in Europe, they're a bit more complacent. Not now, now people get a bit angry, but historic, for the last few years. And so I'm really concerned, and you're seeing this like the backdoor in Apple, demanded by the UK government, that eventually the European governments, and of course the American, the US government, are gonna start creating their own kinds of censorship. It might be a little more clever, it might be more soft, they're gonna just kind of control what you see, they're gonna try to change the Twitter or X algorithm to you only see what they want you to see. And there'll be like bad websites they ban, they just won't work, and most people won't notice. But they have very sophisticated AI surveillance mechanisms already, just mostly used for advertising, but all that could be repurposed for censorship very easily. And not just hard censorship like you see in China where the internet's blocked, but soft censorship where they're trying to mold what you're thinking, your mind, what you believe. And a lot of that's through controlling the feed, what you're doom scrolling through. There's gonna be a lot more doom scrolling in the future because things are gonna probably get worse before they get better. Yeah. And that's what worries me. So we're not building this technology to help people in other countries. We're building this technology to help our future selves and our children who will live under, we are certain, increasingly impressive environments. And eventually, people get fed up and they'll change things, and in the future world, we won't have to build this technology, but right now we do. You gotta win defense before you can go to anything more creative or interesting. Like, I would prefer to think about economic problems. How do we, you know, I was very interested in how do we produce electricity cheaply. I'm very interested in neuroscience. There's a lot of other things in a better world I would rather be working on than privacy, but privacy is what you need right now. So that's why I'm working on it. And I understand that not everyone wants to do that, but I think more people should. And everyone has a role to play. Like programmers should be programming this stuff. My grandma should be installing it, and she's not gonna be able to file a bug report, but she could at least be like, you know, tell her friends it's broken, and complain like in, you know, I don't know, Telegram. I mean, a lot of people can do that, right? So, and you know, people that speak languages can translate stuff. People that can do podcasts can educate people. Everyone has a role to play. And the real problem we actually have is not tech, it's usability and lack of education. If it was more usable, more people knew about the problem, then more people would tackle the problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I wanted to ask you my last question here. It was supposed to be, are you optimistic things are going to get better? But I assume you believe that things are going to get worse and you're preparing for things to get worse.
Things will get worse because they always get worse before they get better. The darkest hour is always before the dawn.
So what do you see in the next few decades?
The next few decades are going to be gruesome, right? Because obviously we're going to have more war. Nation states are going to fight each other. I'm in Switzerland. Swiss people are worried they're going to be, it's crazy. You would never have this thought even 10 years ago. Maybe, you know, they're seeing a lot of fresh water in Switzerland, the glaciers, which are melting. What if there's a water shortage in France? Well, France or Italy, I mean, it sounds crazy. Yeah. Germany, Austria invade Switzerland. It'd be very hard because I think they have all the bridges like wired to explode and they're all bankers with guns. So it'll be difficult. But I'm just saying, it will be different. People are thinking about this. We have more drones, we have more surveillance, and we have a lot of people, and there's going to be resource shortages. Food prices are never going to go down. They're going to keep skyrocketing up. More and more, it's just because, and supply chain breakdowns will get worse. Tariffs will get worse. There'll probably be another COVID, I mean, just, it's not even like, you don't have to be a conspiracy. It's just like, look, there's a lot more people traveling. So all diseases are going to spread quicker. And I think it's going to get worse. And I think the entrenched ruling class powers will not want things to change. They have it pretty good. Maybe they think, oh, I can go to New Zealand, just hang out there and things will be fine. And I do really believe climate change is a problem. We're going to have increasingly erratic weather. We're going to have more crop failures. More crop failures are going to cause more migration. That will cause more warfare. That will cause social and institutional disintegration. And that's nothing you can do can stop that, other than dramatically changing the nation state itself. So it's going to have to get really bad, and the people are going to have to get fed up. And and this has happened before, right? When during the Middle Ages, we had the Black Plague. And actually, in the Roman Empire, you had plagues as well. And people got fed up. And people in places that no one even thinks about, Ghent, in Belgium, they rose up, they overthrew their oppressive medieval governments. They set up, at the time, I think in Ghent, it was like republics based on the guilds, the guild system, the tradespeople, the workers. People had more freedom. And then that was repressed by the monarchist. And then, and you had the French Revolution in France, you had Cromwell in the UK, obviously didn't turn out that well, but it was an attempt, right? So it's not like people haven't changed their government before. And so I believe people can change it in the future, but we have to give people that choice. And maybe the choice is they don't want to. Maybe they prefer to have the Communist Party in China. That's their choice. Let them have that choice. If people want to have a monarch in the UK because they like all the ceremonies, I'm kind of okay with that. Like people can do whatever they want. People want Trump in the US, they can have Trump. If people want a radical democracy in Spain, they can have that. But people need to have that choice. People should not be forced to accept a government they don't want. They should not have their mind manipulated. They should not have their thoughts manipulated. They should not be tracked. They have the right to dissent, the right to free speech, the right to protest. And of course, these are rights. We cannot trust any law to enforce them. We can only trust technology to enforce them. And just as our ancestors used the printing press, in the city I'm in Switzerland, they used to have to smuggle books into France because they were illegal in France. They would print them in Switzerland, these kind of anarchist printers, and smuggle them in to spread the Enlightenment in France, to get people to think beyond the possibility of the king, the divine sun king ruling everything forever. And, that's what we're doing today with the internet. And it's the same struggle our ancestors faced. Our ancestors were successful, and now it's our turn. And we'll just have to take that up.
That's very interesting. A lot of that aligns with what I believe and how I view history. I've been studying history for a long time too, and plenty of lessons to learn from there. I guess I don't really have any more questions for right now, but I'd love to stay connected with you folks.
Yeah, I'll give you I use Signal, I use SimpleX. Proton Mail is actually pretty good for email. There are tools out there which people can use. They're not the best. They could be better. Yeah. But we have a way to communicate, which I believe is not perfect, but it's a lot better than Gmail. Yeah, reach me out on Proton anytime. Yeah. And if people are interested in Nym, we're on Telegram. We're on Matrix, which is like a kind of self-hosted Signal-esque thing. We're pretty easy to get a hold of, and there's not that many of us, but we try our best.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to some more talks with you folks.
Yeah. We'll get more over. Okay, great to meet you.
Yes, you too. Thanks.